This is a show about my heroes and their legacies. The legacies they're making and the ones they're breaking. These are their stories of successes and failures. These are their journeys. This is their legacy.
This is Successor.
All right, welcome to the podcast. My name is Evan Payne. This is a show about making and breaking legacies, and I get to sit down with entrepreneurs, business leaders, athletes, actors, folks from every walk of life to talk about how they are making and breaking legacies, given their own life experiences and given their platform. And this is no different. I have somebody very special today with me. His name is Brandon Puffer. And we're going to also talk a little, do an intro to him in just one moment. I do want to take a second, too, to plug. If you have the opportunity to go to successorpodcast.com, you can also find alternate ways of viewing this and listening to this. If you are on the road, I want to make sure that you get every opportunity to listen to stories like Brandon's in the most clear way possible, the most accessible way possible. And you can find that at successorpodcast.com. Also, say hello to my sponsors. They're wonderful people, and really grateful for them helping put this on. So that said, back to the task at hand. We have Brandon Puffer in today. Brandon is an American former professional baseball player, a relief pitcher, who played in the Major League Baseball with Houston Astros, San Diego Padres, San Francisco Giants. And in 2007, Brandon signed with the Texas Rangers, playing for their Double-A affiliate, the Frisco Rough Riders. Now, after a playoff game, Brandon joined his teammates for a celebratory night out, which led to a night of drinking and what he calls some poor choices. And I think the story would agree, but I'll let you assess too. But as a result, he was arrested for the intent of a crime and sentenced to 5 years in prison. After 3.5 years, he was eligible for parole and was free to start his new life. And today, Brandon Puffer is the co-founder of GPS Legends, where he serves as a coach and mentor to 17-year-old players. GPS Legends began around 2018 and is driven with a mission to create a competitive baseball environment by instilling character, developing leaders, and building confidence one player at a time. That is right in line with our values here, too. And through the sport of baseball, GPS Legends seeks to build self-confidence, self-esteem, humility, and respect for the community through the foundation of faith. And let's round this out a little bit. Brandon has lived a life of fame, adventure, pursuit, passion, faith, humility, perseverance, and redemption. And it's his story of redemption that he shares with the hope of helping others navigate through the challenges of life and how to fill that God-shaped hole that has us seeking true fulfillment and satisfaction. Brandon is the author of his book, From the Bullpen to the State Pen, which has sold over 400 copies in a month. And you can find Brandon at brandonpuffer.com and on Twitter at Coach Puff Positive. That's POSITV, where he shares encouraging quotes and messages. Long-winded, my apologies, but Brandon, you deserve every second of it. So, Brandon, I'm really appreciative to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Evan. I really appreciate it. It was a great intro, and I just appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. Been looking forward to this for some time. Now, when I first heard your story from a friend of mine, I was immediately intrigued, and he said, "Oh, and I've got his phone number if you want to chat with him." So, definitely made the leap there. But what I'd love to do here is just kind of give you the chance to give us a little bit of an overview, kind of what I'd love to understand, before we get into kind of the nitty gritty of some of the experiences you had. I'd love to just kind of know how you got to the playing level of an MLB career. Right? There's a lot of kids, a lot of folks out there that I imagine have dreamed to be, right. But I'd love to just kind of know how you got there and what some of your influences were that got you to the big leagues.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it all started with just a passion early on for the game. That was, I think I would have to give a lot of that credit to my dad. He introduced me to it, and along with so many other sports, it was just in the hopes of keeping us busy, my brother and I, and involved. And my dad was an athlete, so and my mom also was a triathlete, so they both had athletics in their background. So I think genetics played a big role in that. But yeah, as we just kind of dove into a little bit of everything growing up in Southern California, basketball, football, soccer, whatever it was, whatever the season was going on. We had a love and affinity for just athletics in general. And, that might include going to watch my dad play in his adult leagues, or
Hmm.
watching my mom, perform a triathlon, or even more than that, the hard work and that went into that. So my mom getting up at, when it was still dark before work to go get a swim or a bike ride or whatever
Hmm.
the case may be, and just really seeing that model, the hard work. So I think, early on, I think it was obvious that at least in baseball, maybe I had a gift or some talent that was there. But then as I grew a little bit older and just continued to pursue that, along with the dream that I verbalized so many times of, hey, I'm going to be a big league ball player. That's all I want to do. I'm going to be a big league ball player. And having parents that were willing to, point to that dream and not squash it, but say, hey, that's great. What are
Hmm.
some of your backup plans? But yes, we absolutely agree. You're going to be a big league ball player, son. And just, getting that encouragement and just, and now as a coach, I see it with young men that want to achieve this dream. There's so many things that go into it. Obviously, God has to, give you a gift. But then there's so much hard work, and it's not just from you, it's from your parents. And I look back, I just
Hmm.
got home yesterday due to a family funeral. We all met back home where I grew up, and we looked at pictures and we had discussions and told funny stories. And really looking at that and going, you know what? Without the support of those parents, without being them driving you all over town to practice and buying your gear and working so hard to make that happen, it just doesn't happen. And so, yeah, I just think it was again just having a little bit of ability, and then having a supportive family, and then just getting the opportunity to go out and do it. And then as I got older and older, it just became more and more real to me and looked like it could be a realistic thing to achieve. And so we just continued to get after that. And I always say, like, I'm going to just keep doing this until they rip the jersey away from me. And every single team tells me, no way, you can achieve that dream. And so fortunately, a couple of them decided to give me an opportunity, and I'm just so thankful. But it was about so much more than me and my gift and my work. It was just all about the support team.
That's fantastic, and certainly apologize for the recent news and recent events, but obviously being able to come out of that with some form of storytelling is always a plus. So I definitely
Yes.
appreciate you sharing that too. Um, so the thing that I always wonder about stepping into professional sports specifically is that learning curve, right? Is the you're now surrounded. You go from being a talented person that has a level of discipline to being around folks that everywhere you go is talented, right? What were some of those learning curves that you encountered that might have been stuck out more than maybe you would have thought being surrounded by athletes of that caliber?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I was drafted out of high school. So when I took off to my first rookie ball season, I was 18. My only experience at that point was, being a good player in my area, which I was fortunate to come out of an area that had, some good baseball. A couple select tournaments here and there. I thought I saw a little bit of what was outside of my, general area. But as soon as I stepped foot in Fort Myers, Florida for my first rookie ball season, it was apparent really quickly that everybody who was here was the best in their area. And
Mm,
everybody, and it's not just the United States; it's the Dominican Republic and Venezuela and Mexico, and from all over the world. These are the best players in the world, and so I think pretty quickly, the adjustment that needed to be made was on a checkup from the neck up, as I like to call it, the
mm,
mental aspect of this thing. And anything from like looking at the size of the rosters to who's going to be cut and what's going to happen, and then just realizing really quickly, like, man, you can really beat yourself up if you continue to focus on things that are out of your control, right? So
mm,
pretty quickly, I had to organize my thoughts and go, what can I control in this whole thing? And it's my energy, it's my effort, it's my work ethic, and that's really it. I mean, so anything that didn't fall under those categories
mm.
was it's easier said than done, obviously, especially when I was young and at that early age. Just went into another category of, hey, I can't control anything about this, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time thinking on it. At least that was the goal. I mean, again, it's easier said than done.
Mm.
So I really started diving into what will set me apart from these other guys. guys. And it wasn't the talent level. I was a 27th round pick, not a prospect by any means. There were certainly guys much more talented than I. But then I just realized if you persevere, it's almost like a war of attrition. Guys
Mm,
will fall off for different reasons. Some of them very unfortunate, injuries and things of that nature. But sometimes it's just they're homesick and they just want to go
yeah.
home. They don't want to do this anymore. Or it's a 14-hour bus ride and it's just a grind and they don't want to deal with this. And I just took the approach very early on that this is the only thing I've ever wanted to do. This is my dream since I was a child. So none of those external factors are going to cause me to quit or give this up or whatever the case may be. If unfortunately I had an injury that forced me to do so, then so be it. But I was blessed to have a couple injuries, but nothing that was going to set me out of my career, right? So I just really just tried to focus on, what can I control? And anything I can't control, I'm just going to have. And it's such a cliche, even as you say it, but it really is so true. And that's the first time that cliche really hit home for me is when I entered that world of professional baseball and was in awe watching these guys play and then going, oh, wait, I'm also competing against all these guys. So I've got to figure out a way to go and set myself apart.
Wow. Well, appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah,
So something that
absolutely.
something that stuck out to me too. You talk about, especially in the minor leagues, the grind, right? And you talk about those. We just mentioned those 14-hour bus rides and the really tough bear to entry already. But you're kind of making peanuts when you're on the road. With minor leagues as opposed to major leagues. Is that still a situation today?
So, from what I understand, that's getting better, right? I've
Mm.
read articles and kept up on social media that they're making a more concerted effort for the minor league ball players. But certainly, when I came in, and I'm not to sound like an old guy or pull that card, but it was rough. I mean, it was peanuts, literally. I always often share the story of when I was in rookie ball. We were making $800 a month, and then they would take a couple hundred out for your hotel and then a couple hundred out for your meals. And then I had a son early on, as you know, if you read the book. So I had a dependent. So now they're taking money out for the dependent. And I'm kid you not, Evan, at the end of it, 2 week check was about $150. And I got fined a couple times for being a knucklehead. So then they would take it out, and it's like, I remember getting a 2 week check for $50. And I always say, I'm like, look, the fine, that's on me. I knew I made a bad decision, but how do I live off $50? And I actually took it to the Twins at one point, and they're like, look, we just do the deductions. We don't look at the bottom line. And so, there were guys that came from money or had a big signing bonus that, were out doing things and eating a little better than others. And for me, it was just kind of like I had a little baby at home. My parents didn't really have the money to add to extra. And so at the end of the day, it was like, you just got to make it work. And so, but what an incentive to want to get out of there, work hard and move up and get that pay bump.
That's right. Yeah. And one of the things you talk about too in the book, and I'm not going to spoil the entire book, but there's certainly some things that I think are really worth pointing to. And actually, I'm hoping to read
Sure.
a small excerpt from there, if you don't mind. One of the early things, not a big spoiler, um, but one of the things that stood
Cool.
out to me too is when you talk about just how gracious your parents were in helping you raise your firstborn, right? What that picture of grace
Yes.
and sacrifice. Um, I imagine that stood with you pretty heavily when it comes to shaping the person that you want to be. But outside of that,
Oh, yeah.
what about the folks? What about the folks in the ball club? Were there any folks that you specifically looked up to that, especially in the early days, that really gave you some grounding, or try to give you a push the right direction to keep you committed?
Yeah, there are, and you're so right about my parents. I mean, like I said, I'm fresh off a visit home, and I mean, I literally just I hit the parent lottery. I mean, mom and dad are still together. They're still in the same house we grew up in. Me and my little brother Todd. And here are me and my little brother and my son Darren, who's in that book, who's now 29, all just kind of like together still as one unit. And it's just, man, it's just hard to not look back and go, gosh, had I not had that support. And when that incident happened with my son, they had said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I want to take care of him. And they said, no, what about baseball? What are you going to do there? That was your dream. And well, I guess I'm going to have to quit or hang it up or I don't know. And they just rallied around me and just supported me. It never
Mm,
could have happened without them. And then yeah, when you're gone, I'm from California to Florida away from my parents, and it's not like we could text and FaceTime and all those things, right? So you have to really lean into staff members that are, pouring into you, pitching coaches, managers. I had my very first pitching coach was a guy named Eric Rasmussen, and then I had Jose Marzon was my manager, and you always remember those first ones. I played 15 years, I think, and I'm still in contact with many players from that first team because we were all in the same boat. We were just lost at sea. It felt like what are we doing? I got yanked out of my house over here to Florida. I'm not mentally prepared for this. I don't have the tool set to be out on my own. And so we all leaned on each other. And that was culmination of teammates, front office personnel. I was still that whole knucklehead mentality and making poor choices. This is my first time with so much freedom. I wasn't acting right. I wasn't doing the things I should have been doing off the field. And they gave me many chances. They would call me in and talk to me and, you got to look at the severity of this and what do you really want to do? And so some really good conversations because, at the end of the day, I mean, they could have just said, get on the next flight home because there's a lot of people that want to be in your shoes and you're not respecting that. They didn't do that. They realized, I think, looking back, that it was like, hey, here's an 18-year-old young man that doesn't have the tool set to deal with this. And not just me, but several of my teammates as well. And, we need to show a little grace, but be firm and have consequences. And so we went through all that. So yeah, I have a lot of fond memories of, from the top Terry Ryan on down to my manager, coaches, and teammates to the clubhouse manager, Wayne Hadaway, that has since passed, rest in peace. But he was just a character of the game that right away just really made it fun to be there, even the locker room. So yeah, some super fond memories, and that's just one team. That's just the first team. But I do. I remember a lot of people involved in the Twins organization that were really helpful.
Yeah, yeah. Um, It that sits well with me, right? You hope that folks that are making that kind of life change, that kind of sacrifice, and are surrounded by a bunch of young dudes, right? You hope that there is some level of mentorship or guideposts, right, for those folks, and you don't want to always just have to be them because nobody else is there, right? But I certainly
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah, it was tough.
Um, One thing I wanted to share, and is kind of moving into, um, the I think the one of the central themes in your book, right? And it's about your time in prison, right, and leading up to that, and what that
Mhm.
what
Yeah.
what the story was, and you do this kind of cool thing where you kind of jump forward and you jump back and you kind of continue to piece more and more pieces back to that, and I thought that was really fascinating. And if you don't mind, though, I'd love to read entry number one, just to kind of set the stage for folks because I want them to read this book. Would that be all right with you?
Yeah,
Awesome,
absolutely.
awesome. I can't read it in your voice, and but I'm gonna just try to try to make it sound as cool as it is on the page.
Okay.
Um, but entry one, and to give the listener context, before each one of your chapters, you have an entry that some of them are covering your time in prison, some are not, right, or some are covering other topics, but these entries are pretty cool, introducing the chapters. So entry one, it says, it had been a long, arduous 3-day trial. After being out on bond for about 9 months, I was ready for my fate to be determined by 12 of my peers. I will never forget the announcement: the state of Texas versus Brandon Puffer. Seems like a mismatch, but I had done the crime and I was prepared to handle whatever consequences came my way with grace and humility. My dad, ex wife, and a wonderful pastor friend named Mel Stauber had endured the entire trial with me. It was just too hard for mom, and I wouldn't want her to go through that anyways. After a very surreal 3 days that included Nolan Ryan sitting in the line of fire for me as a district attorney tried to trip up the strikeout king who was arguing on my behalf as a character witness and against any jail time the verdict was in. In the case of Brandon Puffer versus the state of Texas, the jury sentenced him to 5 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Gulp. But I've never been in trouble. I was told probation was
Mhm.
likely. These thoughts and many more circled through my head while two officers administered handcuffs. Can I hug my dad? No. Come with us. I turned and mouthed the words I love to you as I was whisked off to a holding cell. They would strip me of all my belongings, dress me in a prison issued jumpsuit, and slam the bars on my 8 by 10 cell. I still to this day hear the clanging of those bars, the resounding metal on metal that still haunts me. At this point is when I started doing the math on how old my children, Darren, Morgan, and Ashlyn, just a baby at this time, would be in 5 years. Every prayer to that point had been, please God, don't let me go to prison. This first prayer while sitting alone in a cell was different, a prayer of surrender. Help me to survive what's coming. Um, wow. I could read that over and over again, and I really appreciate your rawness in this. Um, so I think what I'd love to understand is more about just the redemptive work that God did in your life there, right? You God says, "Be still and know that I'm God." You have to be still, right? You were in a place where there's not many options, but some form of stillness, right? So can you tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about where where you started to gain hope in that situation after all of that had occurred?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Evan. Wow. And when you read that, it's so strange to me because I can feel it, hear it as if it was yesterday.
Mm.
But then I also can look at it from outside and go, that seems like another life ago. Like that happened to another person, you know?
Yeah.
So it's interesting the emotions to go through that. And that's really powerful. But yeah, immediately when those bars clanked, and I remember it vividly. I had a surrendered moment to God. I had said the prayer. I had been a Christian. I was raised in a pretty good home. I mean, my mom was solid, solid, solid. Always. My dad took a little longer to come around, but he did. So I got to watch that transition, which was awesome. And I knew right from wrong. I knew where my foundation needed to be. All those things were in place, right? But I obviously was not choosing that all the time. And that's how I ended up in this place, this cell at the time. And so literally that moment, 5 minutes before that, when I was sitting there waiting to hear what they were going to say, I was still hopeful I'd be going home. I would be getting probation. I was still like, okay, I'm going to get my life on track. I'm going to make it work. But no, it was like, no, that's not the case. This is your new reality. So from that moment of surrender, I truly did have a peace and a hope at that time. I mean,
Mm.
it wasn't like, okay, once I get out of here, then I'll have hope, I'll have peace. But until then, I'm just gonna go into my shell and just kind of, whatever the case may be, I'm just not gonna, see or hear anybody or whatever. I had a heart for people when I was in prison. Um,
Mm.
I had a certain positivity about me that at times they were like, I don't understand. Some folks would figure out that I had played ball or whatever, had a pretty good life, and you can imagine, not everybody is from the same background there. And so it'd be like, how can you live in this little cell in this metal bunk with next to nothing when you've lived in, whatever, 5-star hotels, you've lived that other life, right? And it was just like, what I realized was the difference between joy and happiness. So
Mm.
happiness was if I had a good baseball game, and happiness was if I got a good contract or won a World Series ring or whatever the case may be, or was in a relationship that was going good. But as soon as that's taken away, baseball, the wins, the losses, the relationship, I'm not happy. That thing's
Mm.
gone. Like you can always lose that. And I
Yeah.
realized pretty quickly, I'm like, man, I have joy in this place right now. Where can I not have joy? I
Mm.
never found it anywhere else. And so obviously that joy, and I know you relate to this for me, came from going, okay, I've had a God shaped hole inside of me. I'm putting God and only God in there now. And now there's joy, not perfection. I mean, trust me, in those 3.5, 4 years, I saw so many things that you wouldn't want to see and had to go through stuff. And all that's, is what it is. But the fact that you can't reach out and hug your family,
Mm.
contact your family, we're very close. That was painful, very, very,
Yeah.
very painful. And it was what I needed. And I like to kind of, compare it to Jonah with 3 days in the belly of the fish. God was like, you do need to be still, and you need more than 3 days. You actually need 3+ years because you're a knucklehead. And so I
Mm.
was aware of that. I was aware of very consciously going, okay, you can use this time to in many different ways. It's not set up. The system's definitely not set up to rehabilitate you. It's not. And so you have to be super intentional about how you spend your time if that's what you want to do. And so my whole focus from that day forward was how quickly can I get back to my family? And how can I become a better version of me when I get there? I've never had this much time on my hands. I've never had this much opportunity. To this point, in fact, I've lived a very selfish life. It was all about my career, me,
Mm.
me, me. I've got to work out. I've got to do this. I've got to be prepared. It's, and I mean, I think you're set up that way as a professional athlete. It's like, it's all about you, right?
Hmm.
How's Brandon doing? How's baseball going? How, all that stuff with my family. And now it's like, hey, my family doesn't really want you to ask that question because it's a very different circumstance now. So it
Mm.
just brought that sense of perspective for us of, hey, it's not, and for me in particular, of like, this isn't all about me and my pursuits and this world's not my playground. This is kind of where I ended up. So it was more like, let's look at others. Like, how can I encourage some people today? Like, there's a lot of folks struggling in this place,
Mm.
prison. How can I be an encouragement? And every day my prayer was, Lord, thank you. Thank you for another day. At night it was thank you for another day closer to my family. Thank you for protecting me today. But then every morning it was how can I be a light in this dark place? How can my presence be a powerful positive influence on someone in this place? And it's no
Mm.
different now. Before I walk in the gym, it's how can I be a light to somebody in this gym today? Before I walk into our baseball facility, how can I impact somebody positively? And I don't always have great days. I mean, sometimes I'm the one that needs the lift, right? But it started right after that sentence, right when I got in that cell of, all right, I'm walking this thing out. I'm going to do my prison ministry from in here. And gosh, man, we have so many awesome opportunities to do that, and there
Yeah.
was also some very, very tough times and some trying times that shaped me to be who I am now. But in general, it was just, okay, God, how are you going to use me in here? How can I have a positive impact? And I got to take some great courses and read some awesome books and talk to some great men that were influential for me. I mean, there's some very talented, gifted, intelligent men that are locked up because of a bad choice. They're not what
Mm.
we all think they are of just, oh, that's where all the bad guys go. That's where they belong. And in some cases, certainly. But in many, it was just like, man, one bad choice because they were impaired almost always, 99% of the time.
Mm.
And now this very talented, very just awesome man is spending their time in here. And some of those guys had life sentences. They're not going to be able to sit where I am today and be free. And I don't take it for granted.
Oh, fascinating. You mentioned, yeah, you talk about good men inside. I mean, you had some pretty great men on the outside before that too. I mean, to have Nolan Ryan as a character witness is you can't. Not many people get to say that. I mean, not only was he the
Yeah.
strikeout king, but he's also probably one of the best fist fighters in the MLB too. I'll
He
never
can push
forget.
a deadlock and throw a noogie on you
That's
pretty
right.
quick.
That's right. I'll never. I'll never forget that. But that's pretty legendary. But it sounds like you also maintained some relationships, or at least restored some relationships with some of those folks after your time in prison as well, right? As well, Terry Ryan, I think you mentioned,
Yeah.
or some others as well.
Yeah, Terry Ryan was the general manager of the Twins during my first rookie ball season.
Mm.
But Reed and Reese
Oh,
Ryan
Reed.
are the sons of Nolan.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they own and operate the AAA team here in Round Rock, Texas, which is close by where I live. It's actually the reason I live in this area. Is I played there in 2001, fell in love with the area, fell in love with just the staff and just the way they manage. I mean, just everything about it is so first class that we created some really good relationships in that. And they were kind enough to so yeah, Nolan was kind enough to come and speak on my behalf, which in one sense is embarrassing because here is a man that has so many other things to do, but he was willing to do that for me, which was just I was so grateful for. And
Oh.
then Reed and Reese really kept up with me during my time away, sending books and letters and encouragement. And then, yeah, right when I made parole and was on my way out for a fresh lease on life, the first job I had was at that very stadium. Reed and Reese stepped out and said, "Hey, what do you need?" And I said, really, I need employment as part of my parole plan. And I'm not super hireable right now. Even to this day, I probably could go down to McDonald's and fill an application today, and there's a good chance I wouldn't get a job based on what it says on paper, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So they came and just really took me under their wing and gave me a job as a maintenance man, which I always joke about because I am the least handy guy. I mean, ever. Like there's just I can't do a whole lot mechanically, but they gave me a job and a purpose, and I did the mundane tasks around the stadium with a smile on my face and praise music in my ears and just jamming out and just so happy and thankful to be free. And then just to be around a baseball stadium was so cool for me. And
Mm,
that ended up kind of morphing into a little more important role and kind of was elevated a little bit more from there. And I just think just it was a great story of people showing faith in you is what I needed. Because,
mm,
the guilt and the shame surrounding something like this says, the enemy says, no one's gonna wants you to work for them. Nobody's going to trust you. No, who would want to love you after that kind of choice and decision? And so every
mm,
time someone showed faith in me, like Rita Reese giving me a job, a parent reaching out for a baseball lesson for their son, just really kept catapulting my confidence to, hey, okay, as long as you own your behavior and you truly seek to be different and make different choices. I mean, obviously, you can't stay in your same mess and expect trust and things of that nature. But as long as you're working and going forward, people will continue to show grace. And every
mm,
time, every step of the way that happened, it just gave me a little more confidence. Like, okay, man,
mm,
maybe there is still a purpose for me. Maybe it's even in baseball. I don't know, because when I was locked up, I'm like, oh, I screwed that up. I'm never going to be in baseball again. I don't deserve
mm.
it. And so God just showed me grace through people, and certainly Reese and Reed Ryan were two of them.
Wow. That's fascinating. I've got and I love bringing my kids to Round Rock Express games. By the way, it's such a hike for us, but I mean, just be able to go see, get them in front of
Yeah.
baseball, and then when I've got girls, and they'll sit there and ask, well, what happens when this guy is over here, or why did that guy just walk off the field? Getting to go through those questions just gets me, just
Yeah.
pumped because to see their interest in a game that has a
So
conversational pace too. For it's been really cool to have that in our life too. um something you brought to mind too is around um trust, right? And about reestablishing trust, with folks that may or may not know you and may or may not have known you. And one of my first guests on this podcast, a gentleman by the name of Larry Smith. I'm a big admirer of his. He is helping solve chronic homelessness. He's also the chairman of a semiconductor company. He's doing incredible things. But one of the stories he tells about trust is um, one of the formerly chronic homeless people that he serves, that he became really good friends with, used to have to always go to the methadone clinic, and that's how they became friends. He began give him rides, and then he was the guy that was, watching the cat and watching the house while they were gone, and talking about building this trust with somebody I mean, who had been, in and out of these precarious situations for a long time. And now this guy's one of the advocates, on Capitol Hill for folks that are formerly and chronically homeless. And so I think it's really good. I love hearing your story, and as the reminder of one mistake, right? Or even a period of time in our lives does not define us, and does not preclude us from being just beautifully designed creatures for God's glory, right? The purpose does not end there.
wow.
And um, and I, I'm just really glad that you shared that. Um, well, I'd love to kind of just also pivot a little bit to um, what you're doing now, right? Because um, the working with kids, and being able to coach and mentor. Um, I'd love to understand a little bit better about what are some of the um, life coaching principles, right, that you're able to bring and establish with kids, and really some of the
Yeah.
leadership that's unique to you and your situation that might differ from my own, right? How does that work with those kids, and how have you found yourself being able to kind of honor that story?
Yes. Well, it's just been, gosh, I mean, just such a blessing to be able to do this. It really has. I mean, it's continued to grow. Our program that we have here in the area, in the Austin area, which is where you are, has just continued to grow. And just the growth is great, but it's more just about the amount of lives that can be impacted. And it starts with the baseball, and every one of them have a dream. They want to be in the position that I was fortunate enough to be in, and a lot of the guys on our staff have, also been in that situation. So we're able to kind of, infuse hope and that, and just kind of understand and empathize with that dream, and also, but what is it? What's it gonna take? What is it gonna take
Mm.
for you to do that? And just very honest feedback, and hey, if you're committed to this is what it. There's going to be sacrifices, and there's going to be failure, and there's going to be things that you're going to have to overcome. Particularly in baseball, it's such a game of failure, and again, cliches, but it really is. I mean, you're going to fail more often than you're going to succeed, and
Mm.
so we know that. And so when we see them really beating themselves up, or really, we're able to kind of encourage, and or there are times where we need to do the opposite. Like, hey, you say you want to do this, but your work ethic, and when you take the field and you're dogging there, not giving 100%, it just takes one time for a scout to see you not giving everything you have, and that can
Mm.
really affect your future. And so just kind of keeping them focused. But then, to your point, with my story in particular, it never fails that there's going to be young men going through things and temptations, and maybe they've already made a big mistake, or maybe they're on their way to making that big mistake, and trying to just encourage them to go, look, man, there's probably not a mistake you can make that I haven't made. There's nothing you can say to shock me.
Mm.
So if you need an advocate, or you need someone to lean on, you can reach out to me. Like, I've been through
Mm.
this, and so I think they get a certain level of comfort knowing, hey, I'm not looking down on you. I'm not judging you. I'm not. If I'm getting on you or holding you accountable, it's because I don't want to see you go through some of the things I went through. That's the hard way
Mm.
to learn. That's an expensive lesson.
Right.
It can be, I paid that price, and you don't have to. I paid it for you. You can kind of pick my brain, and I think I'm going down the wrong path. And so, I always hear and enjoy, or one of my favorite podcasters, Ed Milet, always says, you're always best equipped to help those who are going through what you've been through. So it never
Mm.
fails when there's an addiction, or there's some recovery aspect to a story, or a poor choice, a parent or a loved one, or hopefully the young man himself will reach out and go, hey, I've got a guy, and he's going through some stuff. Would you be willing to sit down with him or chat with him, or whatever the case may be? And so it's always a yes. And then through the great game of baseball and all the fun memories we're making, and I mean, we have a lot of fun too, it kind of builds that bridge and kind of creates that relationship, for that safe space to go, look, man, if you're going through something, you can come to me. And that's not just while you play for GPS. That's forever, and
Mm.
so sometimes it will be that way. It'll be several years down the road where a kid will reach out and go, hey, I got to talk to you about something. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. So I just think baseball is definitely the platform, and I'm so passionate about it. I love going out to the field and coaching them. I love getting the messages of, hey, coach, I just committed to go play at this school, or I have this
Mm.
successful day, or whatever it is. Being able to have a small part in that is awesome. And in terms of our program, I mean, it just doesn't go without all the awesome coaches we have. We have so many men that maybe they play at the big league level, maybe they didn't. Maybe they're just good high school players or whatever, but their passion and their love for pouring into these young men, that's what makes the experience. It has nothing to do with me or any one individual that's in this program. It's all about these coaches that are just so committed to the development of these young men, both on and off the field.
Um, the one of the things that stood out. I mean, you talked about this a couple times so far, but you talk about the kid's success, and seeing that impact, right? Whether it be, you know, um, college offers, or or yeah, I mean, even a success as to be measured as, hey, this person has a problem and they came to me, right? That's a success, right? This is there's
Yeah,
something that the kid is dealing
for
with, and
sure.
and they're willing to trust, they're willing to open up, and they're obviously seeking resolution or advice, right? But how do you, on a day to day, given that part of the life is winning and losing games, right? That can be one measure of success. But how do you kind of day by day measure, your impact if you're hitting your own personal benchmarks for what you're contributing to those kids' lives? And I just want to workshop this, because I wonder this about with my kids myself. Did I add to their lives? How am I measuring that? So would you be willing to speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Evan, I think a lot of this is going to be in hindsight, right? Like,
Mm.
we're not going to know right away. So for
Mm.
me, it kind of goes back to like, what can I control, right? And sometimes God gives us those little glimpses, right? That positive text message from a parent or a young man that says, "Hey, you really had an effect," and it's like, "Oh, thank you, I needed to hear that." But sometimes you don't get that, and so for me, it's again goes back to that. Okay, every day is a new day, a new opportunity to have a positive impact. Do I blow it on some days? Absolutely, man. But every day, my prayer is, okay, you woke me up, you gave me that next breath. I'm not guaranteed it. We're really not. And how can I have a positive? What's your purpose for me today,
Mm.
right? And so it's just like some days you know that, right? It's like I have a game or I practice, so I need to be the most positive, encouraging. And by the way, I hold my guys accountable. I can be tough. So sometimes guys are like, "Wow, that wasn't very positive or encouraging," but it's like, "Hey, you might need to hear that." And sometimes I'll even take that too far, where, man, I probably was out of character right there. I apologize. But I do truly just wake up every day and take it one day at a time. It's probably more of my recovery, aspect to me, where it's like, okay, just today, how can I affect people? Is it just a
Mm.
smile at the gym? Is it just driving by and nodding to somebody? Whatever the case may be, like, how do I have a positive impact today? And
Mm.
so I think at the end of each day, you have to kind of look back and go, did I do the most I could with today? It was a gift. Did I do the most I could with it? I think some days the answer is going to be, yeah, probably not. I was a little bit lazy. I could have done more. And some days it's going to be like, yeah, man, you went out of your way to send that message because God put someone on your heart, or make that call, or say something to somebody that looked like they were struggling. And man, you hit that one out of the park. That was awesome. Thanks for that opportunity, God. But it really, for me, man, it's just a daily thing. I mean, and that's sometimes that's a minute to minute, hour to hour, right? Because I
Mm.
still have a lot of struggle in the mental health realm of anxiety and things of that nature that can really get me back to focused on myself. And so I realized meeting with you and sharing my story or encouraging others or doing something outside of myself, selfishly really helps me. And when I
Mm.
give it away, it builds me back up and holds me accountable for my choices and my decisions. And so I always tell my family, like the ones who really, really know me, my wife, who you got to see, even my real close relatives, like my parents, like at the end of most days, Evan, I feel like I went about 12 rounds with Mike Tyson mentally. The just the struggle of trying to do the right thing and make the right choices and not let the enemy and temptations tear me down. It's like it's a battle. I mean, it
Yeah.
literally is a battle every single day. Some worse than others. Sometimes I'm in a gray mood and nothing happened. Absolutely no reason. My circumstances haven't changed one bit. I'm just feeling down. And then
Mm.
some days I feel great. And it's like, and nothing again, maybe nothing even changed. It's just, I just feel great. And I think if you just keep an attitude or a posture of gratitude, just what
Mm.
can I be grateful for? So when I start feeling down, when I start feeling this sense of me and selfish and I don't want to do that and I don't want to, whatever the case may be, it's like, man, you have so much to be grateful for. Really, you do. And so, but I'm so human that I screw that up on a daily basis. But I think that's how I measure my impact. Back to your question, that's kind of long winded, but it's like, okay, with who was put in front of me today, how did I do? How did I do? And some days I
Mm.
have to be honest and be like, not very good. I didn't do very good. And some days it's like, man, I think I had an impact today. I think I encouraged some folks. So that's it. Just looking at and just evaluating that daily. And then to your point earlier, just because you messed it up today, you get, hopefully you get that chance again tomorrow. Let's learn from it and be better.
Yeah, yeah, I really appreciate you unpacking that. That's that was some. There's a lot of wisdom in what you just said that I can't wait to cut up and send to people. Hey, here's something you need to hear today, right? Because especially when you talk about joy,
Huh.
right? Joy, to your point, right, is not happiness, but joy underlines is
No.
the undertone for our day to day um, our day to day demeanor, right? If we are pursuing the source of joy, if we are grateful, right? If we're practicing joy and gratefulness and having a peace that it many times transcends any understanding, right? Or surpasses any understanding, and so there's a lot of nuggets
Absolutely.
that you dropped along the way
Absolutely.
there that I'm like, yeah, just trying to grab those and remember them. And failure, what a word that um has, I think, has so much opportunity, right? I mean, when you're working out well, right, and you're working out regularly, and you're trying to push yourself, you're going to go for your failure sets, right? You're going to go for those ones that grow your muscle, that push you to the brink, and then you fail, and you go, okay, now I know my new limit. Now I know my new limit, and just the things that we build in our bodies and our
Yeah,
practices from pursuing failure, right? Pursuing, what is just a little bit
yeah,
beyond, and you mentioned a lot of cool little nuggets around that too, and I really appreciate your attitude. Your positive attitude is rubbing off on me. I've had a long, like, groggy, gray day, and this conversation right now is just
yeah.
pumping me up. So, so definitely appreciate
Awesome,
being
man.
a
Iron
blessing me on
sharpens
that.
iron. And to your point, yeah, yeah. Thank you, Evan. No, I appreciate that. And it's ironic because I think any bit of growth that any of us have had, it always comes out of a little bit of pain, adversity, out of our comfort zone. But yeah, we don't want to do that, right? Or for our kids as parents, we always want to protect them from all that, right? We don't
Yeah.
want our kids to hurt or any of that. But you look back and you're like, man, had I not gone through some of it, and some of it was obviously self-inflicted and choices that didn't have to be made, but some of it was just everyday stuff. Just going through some adversity was where all the growth I can think of in my life happened. So it's
Hmm.
like, gosh, we don't want to go through that, and we don't want our loved ones to go through that. But then also, we want to be the best versions of ourselves. And I think almost every story with a lot of any teeth to it have that adverse moment, that time you went through something painful. And
Hmm.
so just remembering that, like God's always shaping us, the greatest steel of all our infrastructure was, obviously made under extreme heat. And so I think
Hmm.
at times we just really need to be shaped and molded. We need to be a little hot. It needs to be a little hot in here. So, that, and I think you were a little hot earlier, right? But yeah, it's just one of those things I think of. It doesn't make it easier. It doesn't mean we love it. I mean, I still fight it and don't want it. It's like, no, I don't want to go through that. But
Hmm.
then looking back, it's like, gosh dang, man, I needed that. I needed to go through
Hmm. The thing, another thing that I really love about your story too, again, especially your unique contribution now is, and I have a friend that reminds me of this, often, but God doesn't call the equipped; He equips the called, right? And that's been really cool hearing kind of how He has taken adversity and created it as part of your calling, right? And has then taken
that. Yeah,
a number of things from your past, but it sounds like there's a lot of good people in your life now too, right? That are a part of your continued growth.
yeah,
um one of the questions that I have around this podcast is, it always goes to, okay, so now what, right? What is the legacy that we are intending to leave, whether or not it shapes out exactly how we want, but where's our heart called to, what is our heart calling, and how do we put that into action for this generation, the next generation, for ourselves and the others around us. So I want to pivot to that. I'd love to just really ask, what is the, given your unique, your unique circumstances, given your unique story, and how God has redeemed you and used you to be so impactful in people's lives. What is your desired legacy look right now? If, let's say, if you were hit by a bus today, and if you were hit by a bus in 20 years, like, what do those look like? Where are you now, and where do you hope to be?
yeah. Man, such a good question. I mean, that's a buzzword for me, legacy. If you went in our baseball facility in Round Rock, right up the road from you, we have a wall that says leave a legacy. And
Mm,
under that is plaques with every young man that's played in our program and went on to play in college and where they went on to play. And then every young man that's been drafted and achieved that dream of playing pro ball. And then if you go in my living room, we have a bunch of canvas pictures that my wife made of our family, and above that it says leave a legacy. And so
mm,
I'm always thinking about that. And then when I was at my family funeral this weekend, which is not a sad moment, it was a celebration of life for my aunt, and got to see all my family members. It was just a wonderful time. But I really thought about that. Like, what does this look like when it's your time? Like, a couple hundred people came and they were celebrating my Aunt Connie. And it was beautiful. And it was
mm,
like, what am I doing? What's this day going to look like when it's my day? Like you said, whether it's tomorrow or in 20, 30, 40 years.
yeah.
And so my hope is, and my prayer is, that I impacted positively with my platform as many people as possible. And then ultimately, what that really comes down to is souls, right? Like
Mm.
with our belief, man, how many people, okay, you're going to heaven, who's going with you? How many people are
Mm.
going there because of you?
Yeah.
Right. And so that doesn't always mean like I'm out there with my Bible thumping on people, but it might mean I'm encouraging people. And it might mean they're like, why does this guy have hope after all he went through? Why is he so happy? Why is he
Mm.
smiling all the time? Like, what's wrong with this guy? And for me, they'll say it's just the joy of the Lord. That's it. And gosh, please don't hear me saying I've got it going on and it's because I'm something special. If anything, understand that because I've messed up so much and because I've made so many bad choices, that I hope people are encouraged because it's like, gosh, God can still redeem and say that guy's mess. What can he do in my life? Right. So I think that's the ultimate measure of success is at the end of it, how many people are going to show up at that church, which I went to this past weekend, wherever ours is going to be, and tell stories of, in fact, right after we're done here, I'm going to make a video honoring Jimmy Williams. He was my first big league manager with Houston, and he
Mm.
passed away today. And Jimmy had a profound impact on me during my major league debut, just based on a little funny story that he did for me. And I just remember thinking that just before you and I got on, because I'm gonna make this video after, of going, when that happens to me, are there going to be people with a video? Are there going to be people
Mm.
sharing a story where I made them laugh or where I, came to their rescue, when they were down or just whatever. I mean, whatever it is. And then it kind of fires you up to go, like, I'm kind of competitive, right? Like, kind of fires me up to go. I'm not like a stat rat, but like, man, how many people can I impact before I leave?
Yeah.
And I think I take the approach of just one more.
Mm.
When I share my story, like even today when your podcast comes out, it's like, can one person be encouraged because we spent an hour talking today? I hope at least one.
Yeah.
And so I think if you just take that approach of like, man, just one more, just encourage one more, then by the end of it, you can probably look back and go, man, I think I had an impact. I think I was
Mm.
impactful on the days that God gave me, even
Yeah.
after my big mistakes.
Wow. Yeah, and you've already encouraged one person today, so you definitely got one stat going for you. But one of the hard things for me about this
Awesome.
podcast too is showing up, and I'm not the expert on legacy, right? I've been through the bumps and the bruises of kind of a, let's just say, a challenging childhood, and the place that God has brought me since and brought my family and those stories, right? So I'm not an expert, but I love the fact that he's put on my heart to ask people that are smarter than me or have their experiences that are unique to them that somebody else is going to click with that I never would have been able to contribute, right? There's people that my guests are going to impact that I will never be able to relate to or never be able to contribute to positively. So I'm just so glad that we're in this virtual room together getting to talk about this. Um, the other side of the coin, though, I'd love to ask too. There's a legacy that you want to leave, that you want to build, and that you want to add to. Are there any things? Are there any legacies that have been handed to you that maybe you want to end, or that you've seen through your life that you want to be a part of ending? And we get some answers all over the board here. Anywhere from human trafficking, mental health issues, some really deep, and some are just I want to get rid of disappointment, and I hope nobody's disappointed themselves. I want to get rid of X, Y, and Z. So I love just kind of just rest in that for a second. Just ask, what is maybe something that you'd like to help end?
Yeah, well, my mind goes to the deeper spaces. As you read my story, there's a lot in there, from sexual abuse when I was young to addiction to a long line of family traumas. Man, I had five great uncles that I looked up to because they were all state champion boxers and they loved to fight and they loved to drink and they loved to womanize. And so as a young man, I was like, man, that's what men do. And saw
Hmm.
my dad in that kind of same light. And um, so, yeah, man, I would love to, as the second chapter is written, because as the first chapter was written, I fell right into all that, right? Like,
Hmm.
this is what we're supposed to do. This is who our family is. This is whatever. And so just to change that narrative for my kids, I have a grandson named Berkeley who I just think of right now, like, man, Berkeley never has to be an alcoholic, or he never has to think of himself as a man only if he's able to whoop somebody or beat someone up or chase
Mm,
that girl or whatever, like. So I really would love to just break some of those generational curses.
yeah.
Again, I go back to the guy I like to listen to on podcasts. He's like, be the one. Who's going to be the one in your family that breaks all that? And I'm like, I want to
Mm,
be the one. Even if that took some really hard lessons, like I feel like God called me to be one of those people in my family to break those, and not on my own. Again, because I've already mentioned my parents and kind of the legacy they're passing on to
mm,
us. So to just continue from them down through my brother and I, through our kiddos and grandkiddos, of just like, okay, no, when you look back at the Puffer legacy, it doesn't have to be, oh yeah, they were all tough guys who like to drink and fight and womanize and yada yada. It's like up until that point, that was it. But then
mm,
Brandon got his life turned around, and Todd, my little brother, and my son Darren, and Berkeley, and Morgan and Ashlyn, my daughters, they realized they didn't have to go down that road
mm,
because the story was told, or I was transparent and vulnerable about all my mess. And that wasn't always the case in my family. There was a big mess, and we talked about it a lot this weekend. Um, but we didn't talk about it. We didn't always know. I was learning. We're learning more this weekend as adults than we knew as kids. Going,
mm,
oh, ooh, man, that's messy. Oh gosh, that was what our family went through. So just being transparent, and vulnerable, and letting that stuff kind of lose its power by getting it out in the open. And I'm very,
mm,
obviously with the book and everything, my kids know everything. When I do a
mm,
podcast, I send it to them. It's like anything you want to know about dad, from the good stuff to the messy stuff. In fact, my daughter, who had my grandson, told me about her significant other early on in the relationship. She goes, Dad, it reminds me so much of you. And I was like, no, no. And she's like, no, the good stuff, all the good stuff. I'm like, okay, 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 good. And that was kind of a joke, but I was serious. I was like, oh no, when I was your age, I wouldn't want you to be dating someone like me. But she's more saying, no, but who you are now. Oh, okay, cool. That encourages me.
That is very cool. Wow. It's
Yeah,
that's I certainly hope. Now I'm not going to pretend that I'm ready for my daughters to be anywhere near dating age. Right? They're young, but uh, that would be nice if that's something that they said.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I do look forward to sizing somebody up one day.
Absolutely.
But um,
Oh yeah.
well,
Oh,
yeah,
that's good stuff. Yeah.
yeah. Well, this has been a really a long awaited podcast, something very refreshing, and
Yeah.
something that I'm glad that that it took the time that God wanted to take in order to make this one happen. But I do want to ask a final couple questions. One, anything else that you are hoping or planning to write at any point in the near future?
I have no plans to write anything else. And I felt led and called to write that book for quite some time. And I've been asked that question. And as of
Sure.
right now, it was like, whew, I got that. I did that. It's out there. It's kind of, like I said, a legacy for my family. And I have zero intent on writing anything else. I mean, if something popped up, who knows? But not as of right now. I don't.
Well, awesome. I mean, it's a treasure in and of itself. Just curious in case anybody wants to follow and get a but bug you with that question
Yeah.
anymore. But
Well,
um,
generally now,
go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say the focus is more like, okay, now the story's out there. It's things like this, and
Mm.
continuing to share and get opportunities when called upon to share that is more kind of my focus rather than like what's next, right?
Yeah, well, that's another piece too. How can I've mentioned earlier how folks can follow you and kind of get involved and hear more of your encouragement. And I want to go back and recap that real quick because yeah, I want them to be able to find you and do that. So if you go to brandonpuffer.com or on Twitter, Coach Puff Positive. That's Positv. I certainly want folks to get plugged in and be involved and be inspired. And you've got a gift that I'm very
Yeah,
thankful that you're willing to share. One last question, and this is hopefully an easy one.
sure.
But any parting words of wisdom that you care to leave with whatever strangers might listen to this message?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer this in two parts. One's gonna be just maybe some encouragement to someone who listens, and then the second part is gonna be encouragement to you. The parting words would just be honesty, and it's right there in the book. You just held it up. It's like you are so much more than your worst mistake. If the enemy or whatever you believe to be the voice in your head keeps beating you up with guilt and shame of you're not good enough, you've messed up, it's just the only way to get past that is to just surrender to God. You've got a God shaped hole inside of you. You can fill it with so many things. If you can truly lay your head down at night and go, you know what, I have peace. I'm good. I'm all the way 100% happy. I have joy. And realizing that your circumstances are right where you want them to be, then man, more power to you. But the honest truth for me was no matter what I achieved, no matter what I did, I couldn't. I had that
Mm,
God shaped hole, and I tried to fill it with so much stuff that it caused so much pain. So if you feel like you have that God shaped hole, please don't feel like you have to have it all together before you cry out and surrender to God. Don't let it be something like my life circumstances that happens for you to do that. Just cry out to Him and be honest with Him and go, look, I'm sick of struggling. I'm sick of feeling this way. Please show yourself to me, and He will. He'll show up. And then second, Evan, for you, because I know you mentioned just doing the podcast and having people on that may encourage people. Like, man, good on you for taking the time to do this and putting it together. I'm sure it's not easy. And I'm sure you probably hear things like, well, who's going to want to hear from you? And why should you be doing a podcast? And dude, this is so awesome that you've taken the time out of your day and set up a studio and had guests. And it's a lot of time and effort to do that. People ask me, do you ever want to do your own podcast? I'm like, heck no. It's a lot of effort. But man, I'm just so proud of you for doing that and just being able to have a platform where you can bring on folks and encourage other people. That's huge, man. Don't ever believe any lie in your mind that says that's not worth it, because it is.
oh, thank you. I received that message. I certainly appreciate it, and it means it makes all the difference
That
when positivity or encouragement comes from a reliable source. And so I definitely appreciate that from you. Thank you so much. Um,
Thank
well,
you.
for today, I think we're about ready to let our guests get back to their day to day life. And but I just really want to one more time just let you know how much I appreciate you taking the time and your transparency and the honoring God's towards your life and being able to share that with folks. And hopefully and we pray that people have just a moment to let those stories in, because God gives us those stories to share with others. And I really appreciate you. So Brandon, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to connecting here in the near future. And thanks again.
My pleasure, Evan. Thank you for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. That'll be all for today.
This is